Imagine your mind as a quiet lake. When undisturbed, it reflects everything clearly, but even the smallest pebble, a worry, a fear, a fleeting regret can ripple the surface and break its stillness. We live in an age where constant thinking is normalized. The more we think, we believe. The more prepared we are, the more control we have. But have you ever felt like your thoughts were carrying you away, like a current pulling you into deeper waters? I used to live that way, afraid of everything from the smallest task to the vast unknown future. Every night, as I lay down to rest, my mind turned into a crowded room filled with noise. And then, one quiet conversation with an old monk changed everything. Today, I want to share that shift not as a lecture, but like holding up a mirror so you can gently see your own reflection. Sometimes, the answer doesn't come from thinking more, but from thinking less. Let us journey together through 7 Buddhist truths, not as a promise to fix your life overnight, but as a gentle invitation to pause, breathe, and listen. Deep within the noise, there is something quieter, soft, still, and always waiting for you. Have you ever sat still, yet felt your mind racing? Your body may be motionless, but inside a stream of worries, unfinished conversations, and vague to-do lists flows endlessly. The mind, in those moments, feels like a door that never closes wide open, letting in 1,000 thoughts that crowd out the stillness within. The Buddha called it the monkey mind, always jumping, always grasping, never resting. And the painful truth is, most of us live our entire lives in that state without even realizing it. We think we're living, but in truth, we're being carried away. Thoughts themselves are not the enemy. Thinking allows us to learn, to grow, to create. But when the mind is untrained, thought becomes a double-edged sword. It doesn't just solve problems, it cuts into us. It fabricates stories, creates imaginary fears, and convinces us that we must think more in order to be in control. But here's the truth. The more we try to control through thought, the more tangled we become. An old monk once told me, "The mind is like water. Stir it, and it stays murky. Leave it alone, and it becomes clear." That clarity doesn't come from forcing ourselves not to think. It comes from learning to observe thoughts without being pulled into them. The mind may dance, but you don't have to dance with it. In this journey, we'll learn how to do just that, not to silence all thoughts, but to recognize what is thought and what is you. One day, I asked the old monk, "Master, why does thinking exhaust me? I'm only trying to make things better." He smiled gently. Then he pointed to a dry leaf stuck in a swirl of water and said, "See that leaf? It can't swim. When the water churns, it gets trapped. But if you let go, it floats." We often believe we suffer because of circumstances, losing a job, hurtful words, uncertainty. But the Buddha taught suffering doesn't arise from life itself, but from our attachment to thoughts about life. Overthinking doesn't mean you're weak. It often comes from the desire to control, to make things certain, clear, perfect. But life is inherently impermanent. The more you grasp, the more you lose. When the mind is trapped in questions like, "What did that mean? I should have," or "What if?" we stop living in the present. We start dwelling in imagined futures or distorted pasts and we suffer for what hasn't even happened. The Buddha never told us to stop thinking. He simply revealed that suffering begins when we identify with our thoughts, and it ends when we let go. It's not easy, but it is a path that can be practiced, and it begins with something small, yet powerful, recognizing when your mind is caught in its own storm. Many people misunderstand letting go of thoughts as forcing themselves not to think, pushing thoughts away as if they are enemies. But the Buddha never taught that. He taught us to observe thoughts without identifying with them, without feeding them, and without resisting them either. The mind is like the sky. Thoughts are like clouds. Some days are clear, some are stormy, but you don't have to do anything to make the sky return to peace. You simply stop grasping at the clouds, and they pass on their own. One meditation student once said, "Every time I sit, my mind fills with noise. I try to push it all away, but it just comes back stronger." The teacher smiled and replied, "You don't need to push. Just greet each thought with a gentle smile. Then return to the breath. That's the secret of letting go. Don't resist. Don't cling. Just notice and return. When a thought arises, you can simply recognize it. That's worry. This is memory. This is fear. And that's it. Soft recognition. No judgment. Like a still pond, it may ripple, but it no longer carries you away. Letting go isn't about losing something. It's about creating space so stillness can return. When the mind gets caught in overthinking, we often forget something simple. The present moment is always here, waiting for us. We don't have to go far. We don't need to climb mountains, find a guru, or read hundreds of books to find peace. What we are looking for is already in this moment. The breath, a single step, the sound of wind through the trees, the coolness of water on your skin. Small things, but if we're truly present, they become miracles. Mindfulness, sati, as taught by the Buddha, isn't some complicated technique. It's simply the awareness of the present moment, the ability to know what we're doing, what we're thinking, what we're feeling without being pulled away. My teacher used to say, "Don't try to silence your thoughts. Just return to what is already here, and the simplest, most faithful anchor is your breath." The breath never belongs to the past. It cannot belong to the future. It only exists now. Every time you come back to the breath, you're coming home to yourself. When you walk, don't rush. Feel your feet touch the ground. When you wash dishes, don't let your mind wander. Feel the water on your hands. When you eat, don't scroll your phone. Taste the food completely. Mindfulness is not separate from life. It is life when we are fully here. Slowly, as presence becomes a habit, thoughts lose their power to pull us away. We begin to truly live, not just drift in a fog of mental noise. Sometimes, what drains us the most isn't the thinking itself, but how we judge ourselves for thinking too much. Have you ever sighed and thought, "Why am I so weak? Thinking won't help anyway. There I go again." Spiraling. These quiet comments repeated often create a loop of self-criticism, making an already anxious mind even heavier. But the Buddha never told us we must be strong, always calm, or perfectly in control. What he invited us into was compassion, starting with ourselves. Compassion metta isn't just love for others. It's the ability to stay with yourself, even when you're confused, soft, or afraid. One monk once told me, when your mind feels tangled like thread, don't try to untie it right away. First, hold it gently, and I learned to do that through simple, kind words. It's okay. You're just tired. It's all right. You're human too. Just breathe. That's enough. Every time I spoke to myself with gentleness, something inside softened. It wasn't about fighting thoughts anymore. It was about accepting that I'm here, and I'm doing the best I can. Self-compassion doesn't erase overthinking, but it melts the resistance. And when we stop fighting ourselves, the mind begins to heal. There's a simple truth we often resist. We cannot control everything, no matter how much you think, plan, or prepare for every outcome. Life will always contain something unpredictable, and it's this obsession with holding it all together that becomes the hidden root of anxiety and overthinking. A friend of mine once stayed awake 3 nights before an important meeting. He rehearsed every line, imagined every reaction, tried to foresee every possible outcome. But when the meeting came, things unfolded completely differently. What exhausted him wasn't the meeting. It was 3 nights of trying to control the uncontrollable. The Buddha taught all things are impermanent, anicca. Life flows like water, and no one can make it stand still. The tighter we grip, the more we lose. The more we resist, the harder it pulls. Letting go is not giving up. Letting go means no longer punishing yourself for what you cannot command. When you begin to accept that, not everything has an answer. Not everyone will understand you. Not every future needs a plan. Then you begin to feel the lightness of freedom. One deep breath, one shoulder released, one silent gaze. Freedom begins right there when you stop forcing life into shape and start trusting it as it is. It's no coincidence that many enlightened beings return to one thing, silence, not because they have nothing left to say, but because they have seen something beyond words. In this journey, after all the lessons of observation, letting go, mindfulness, compassion, one thing has always been quietly present: stillness. Not outer silence, but inner quiet, a space where you stop arguing with thoughts, stop chasing answers, stop striving to become someone else. You simply exist. I remember the first time I sat alone in a meditation forest. No voices, no familiar sounds, just breath and heartbeat. At first, my mind thrashed like a frightened child. But then, somewhere in that stillness, it softened. There was no victory, no arrival, just a vast silence, like a sky without clouds, needing nothing, lacking nothing. The Buddha once said, "Silence is the best answer to questions that are not real." Overthinking doesn't vanish by force. It dissolves in full presence. And in that silence, you are no longer the controller, no longer the seeker. You are simply awake. You've stayed until the end. And to me, that already means something deep, because not everyone dares to pause and look within. But perhaps now, you felt this truth for yourself. Peace doesn't come at the end of perfect thoughts. It doesn't come when the outside world aligns. It comes when we stop demanding our mind to be perfect, when we learn to breathe amid confusion, to smile through uncertainty, to gently hold our own hand even without all the answers. That is the path of awakening. No rush, no harshness, no pressure to become someone else. Just each day, returning a little closer to yourself, just a little, but truly. If this video brought you a moment of stillness, of insight, or even just one deeper breath, please consider sharing it with someone who might also need it. And if you'd like to continue walking this path of Buddhist wisdom, feel free to subscribe, not as a click, but as a gentle reminder each day, I'll come home. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for choosing peace, even if only for this moment.